Welcome everyone to the Sacramento Storytellers Guild Liars Contest. Today you're going to hear some outrageous lies. Might have a little truth, or they might just exaggerate the truth. But either way, you're going to hear lots of chuckles throughout our contest today. We have 7 speakers and their timing is 7 to 10 minutes. So I'm going to be showing cards to them at, 8 to 10. At 8 minutes, I'm going to show the green. At 9 minutes, I'm going to show the yellow. And 10 minutes, they have to shut their mouth. So we have 7, and I'm going to start with our first teller, who is on Zoom. And that's...
Can we make a few announcements first? Because
oh, you want to do announcements first?
Well, Dave's not up.
Oh, David's not that. Yeah, we'll do announcements first. Let's have our chairman of our storytelling.
Let you talk to him.
Oh,
sorry, everybody.
Hey,
Dave is not quite on
okay.
yet, so we're calling him right now. I wanted to let you know about the Bay Area Storytelling Festival. It is April 28th, I believe, or 29th.
20.
No, Bay Area Storytelling.
Oh, yeah, 20.
April 29th. Here's a flyer, if I may.
There's flyers out here.
Okay, and there's a bunch of flyers out here. Great. Okay, this is put on by the California Association of Storytellers. No, Storytellers Association of California. They are a very professional organization. They are kind of our mother umbrella organization. They provide us a lot of support. And so they are doing, this is an annual storytelling event they've been doing for years and years and years. They had to stop doing it because of COVID. And now they're back to it. And so it should be a very fun event. I totally encourage you to go. There are about 10 of us or so that are going from this Storytellers Guild down to that festival. The other festival I want you to be aware of is the Sacramento Valley Storytelling Festival, the first of its kind. Yay! We are holding it, and that is on May 20th. And it's going to be at the Dante Club off of Howe and Fair Oaks Boulevard. 3 outstanding storytellers are being featured in the evening from 7 o'clock on. In the daytime, each of those amazing storytellers are going to do some workshops on how to tell stories. We're going to have local regional tellers, Mark Berry being one of them, sharing their skills at storytelling, which will be a lot of fun. And there will be an open mic session as well. So we have tickets here if you're interested. They're only $25, goes from 1 p.m. till 9 p.m. It's so worth the price. These storytellers garner a lot of money. And we're not making any money on this event either. So please, if you're interested in going to this event, please do so. Is Dave on yet?
Dave is having trouble. He's
trying to
get signed in.
Okay, let's admit him then.
And while they're trying to figure out, I have some flyers over here. If anyone would like to take some flyers, suppose.
Is he there? If not, we'll start
He's
with
there.
him.
He's got to come in. Yeah, here he is.
Okay.
Let me switch him over.
Kidding.
All righty. Dave's back on again. Got them all signed in. So we're going to start. Dave Tarvin. The age factor. The age factor. David Tarvin.
No, we can't hear you well at all, David. Very little. No. Oh, you didn't hang up the phone.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, now we can probably go now, David. My phone was on. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I had to do it. My time start now?
When you start, I'll start.
All right, I'm starting now. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Dave, and it is my great pleasure to be here with you today and to tell my little story. My story is about age. You know, we all get older and it's always kind of a shock. And I can remember the exact time when that all kind of started for me. You see, I was sitting at a bus stop in Kailua, Hawaii, on the island of Oahu. I was sitting on this bus stop bench, coffee in my hand, watching the swaying trees go back and forth and relaxing before the bus came, and feeling those trade winds massaging, blowing across my face. Well, I was sitting there just kind of drinking that all in, and pretty soon other people started to show up to catch that bus. You see, I caught that bus in Kailua, and then I took it just to the next town over, Kaneohe, where I worked right on the bay in a treatment center for adolescents. And I built boats with kids and took them sailing. I worked in a sailing program. And so I was just sitting there, people come up, and then all of a sudden, about 10 minutes before the bus, this beautiful, and I mean beautiful, middle-aged Hawaiian woman comes, and she sits right next to me. Wow. I spark up a conversation with her, and we're talking. And after about 5 minutes, all of a sudden, I started to sneeze. Now, I don't mean a nice, strong, kind of gentle, gentlemanly sneeze. I mean, I was sneezing, and it was uncontrollable, one after another. Achoo, choo, choo, choo. It was crazy. Well, this woman, Kalia, she reached into her purse and she pulls out this little pill and gives it to me. And she says, "Hey, I work in a health food store. This will help you." So I took the little pill, and sure enough, starts to subside. I go to work. Everything's going okay for a couple of hours, but all of a sudden, I broke out in hives. Not just little tiny hives. We're talking big, large hives, the size of silver blood doubloons all over. Well, I left work and I went to the doctor, and I was talking to the doctor, and he said, "Dave, you have allergies." I started laughing. I said, "Doc, I'm 40 years old. You don't get allergies when you turn 40? He said, "Dave, that's exactly when it comes. It's because you're getting older." He said, "Dave, you are getting older, and I got news for you." He said, "It gets worse before it gets worse." Well, I went back to work, and life kind of went on. I just kind of adapted to the hives, but I had them all over. And then my eyes started to water. I had fountains of water pouring out of my eyes all over my clothes. By lunchtime, I'd have to change my clothes. They'd all be soaked. And then my nose started running. That was even worse. And I was thinking back to that doctor. I thought, I should have taken that shot that he wanted to give me, because he did want to give me a shot for the allergies. But I told him, no. No shots for me. I'm afraid of needles. So I just put up with all of those symptoms. But the watery eyes and the runny nose got to be too much. So I went to that health food store to talk to Kalia. And she said, "Oh, we got this salt thing. You gargle with it. This will really be helpful." So I got some. I went home. I tried it, and it was helpful. And then I thought, as a man, if this is good, more is better. Well, I lived 2 blocks from one of the most famous beaches in the world, Kailua Beach. And so I walked down to the beach, and I thought, I'm going to go out into the ocean a little bit. I'm going to float on my back, and I'm going to gargle with seawater. Mother Nature's elixir here in the beautiful blue Hawaiian waters. What could be better? So I did that. And right there at the end of the beach, actually, is a river. That's the end. The river comes down from out of the mountains, empties into the bay. And so I was right there. And I'm floating on my back, gurgling away, happy as a happy as an oyster sitting at the bottom of the bay. And then pretty soon I started to hear this strange sound. I heard this sounded almost like laughing. So I turned over real quick and I was treading water and I looked out through the bay, and there 20 feet away from me, I had forgotten at that time of the day, right at dusk, these two big sea turtles would come in to feed right there at the mouth of the river where it comes into the ocean. Well, I was staring at these two sea turtles and they're I mean, I think they were laughing at me. I don't know, maybe they'd never seen a grown man floating, gurgling in the open ocean, but I started to feel self-conscious. And so that was the end of that. And so I went home. Well, pretty soon I started to get this tickle in my throat. So I gargled again with salt water. I went to bed. I woke up in the morning and I went to the local coffee shop, and suddenly I started to spontaneously speak in an accent. I looked at the sweet young barista and I said, I need me some coffee. Can you get that for me, me dearie? I don't know how it happened. All of a sudden I'm talking in a pirate accent and I couldn't control it. It was a compulsion. I just couldn't stop it. And it got worse and worse during the day. I got out of the coffee shop okay, but then I wound up at work. And when I was talking to the kids, I would say just the darndest things. And they kind of took it in stride. They thought it was a joke, but it was not. I'd just be, hey, now Swabby, you cannot do that. If you do, you will be walking the plank. Well, they just thought that was funny as heck. But when that day was over, I had to go to the bank. Now I was feeling pretty desperate about all of this stuff. And I went to the bank and I was trying to get some money. And so I'm standing at the counter talking, and I told the clerk, I need me some of those silver doubloons for the washing machine down at the laundromat. Well, she called over the banker, and the next thing you know, he didn't think it was very funny that I was talking in the pirate voice, and he called the police. Now that's when I knew that I could get into real trouble. And I thought, you know what? Maybe it's not so bad getting the shot. So I went and got the shot, and all that cleared up. I took Kaylia out to coffee as a thank you. And I told her the whole story, and about the pirate voice had kind of disappeared. But she told me, she said, I kind of like that pirate voice. I said, Well, the next thing you know, we date for a couple of months, and the pirate voice only came back during Kayla and I's most intimate encounters. I can't tell you those because they are R-rated. But I tell you, I learned an important lesson. You take your shot when you get it.
Good job, Dave. Hey, can you tell me, did you see the sign saying the timing signs?
No, did I go over?
No, you did not.
You were fine.
You were perfect, but we were holding them up, and
I was holding them up, but I didn't see if you guys had it. Could see
Oh,
it.
I work with a timer, so according to my timer, I got like a minute left.
So warning to you on Zoom, check your own time, because we have no way of telling you.
Yeah, I'm sorry I held up the card.
I might just not have noticed them because I was pretty much I was thinking and talking and trying to get it all together. So
Great
they
job.
might have been up there and I just didn't see them. I was actually watching my timer.
Good job, Dave.
You did fine.
Yep.
Good.
All right. for our speaker, second speaker. Hi, Gail.
Right.
Our second speaker is Ed Lewis, the Hag of Lopez Island. The Hag of Lopez Island, Ed Lewis.
All right. Are we ready, Karen?
Yes.
Okay. The hags are coming. The hags are coming. They will be here soon. It was a typical Halloween day in 1955 on Lopez Island. Now, Lopez Island is in the San Juan Islands, which is just below the Canadian border in Vancouver Island. And it was a typical morning. Us gang of 3 boys got up and headed on down to McKay Harbor, where we rowed out to check our crab pots, the 5 crab pots we had set the night before. Now, we started off with Ralph the Runt because he was only 9 years old and he was kind of small. And so he rowed in the harbor where it was nice and calm. And then we got out to the rough water, and Big Mike, who was 10 years old, full of muscles, took over and he powered that boat through those choppy waves in Puget Sound out to the crab pots. And then me, Eddie Spaghetti, the meatballs are ready, was on that bow, because I was known throughout the islands as the best boat balancer in the world. I could stand on the bow of any boat and not get knocked off, waves crashing over me, no problem. And I would pull up those crab pots, and the first crab pot we had 5 good size Dungeness crabs. And the other 5 pots had at least 5, if not more. We had about 30 good sized Dungeness crabs that we took on back to my mom, who was the world's greatest chef, in our opinion. She made these exquisite crab cakes and this crab dip that just melted in your mouth. And of course, we ate them with Lay's potato chips. Well, after lunch, we would head down to Agate Beach, where we had a fort, and it was almost totally built out of driftwood. We still had the roof to put on. So we went out into the forest and put that, got some driftwood pieces and finished off the top, because that night was Halloween. We were going to do our trick-or-treating, but we were going to prove once and for all that our school teacher was a hag. We knew it. No one else did, but we knew it. So we prepared our fort. And you all ought to listen to this, because you may need this kind of protection. First of all, we went and got some grasses and laid them down, put our sleeping bags. We had built these little wooden tables. And on that table, we opened up our pocket knives and left. And that's in case the hag comes in and you need to do something about it. We took our matches. There were paper matches. You remember those old things? And you have to take 3 of them out, and you twist them and you put them in your hair behind your ears. And then you take your best Sunday church school shoes and you lay them at the foot of the bed, make sure they're really polished. And the last thing you have to do is put a Bible opened by the door, because if the hag does happen to come into your room or our fort or anything like that, she has to stop and read that Bible. And of course, she's not going to be done in time. And she has to get out of there before that sun comes out, because she doesn't come out until it's late at night, right around midnight. Well, we were all set. We got marshmallows. We had some of that crab. We set up our own bonfire down at the beach, had the best food, and we even we passed around and opened our Topps baseball cards. And that year, I got a 1854 rookie Mickey Mantle
Whoa.
card, which later on, with other cards I had, I sold them for about $3,000. Well, we went out trick-or-treating, and then we headed up to the hag's house. Now, Ralph the Runt and Big Mike went into the graveyard where we knew the hag was going to come, and sat into the caretaker's cottage. And I ran, because I was a fast runner along with the balancer, down to the hag's house, and I hid out underneath this beautiful weeping willow tree, sat there and waited for her. And precisely at 11:45, she came out of her house, and on her porch, she began to peel her skin from the top of her head all the way down to her toes. And then she took that skin and carefully laid it over the porch rail. And then she began creaking along with bits of little flesh and mucus and pus and little blood dripping off. And as she was walking, she was singing, and you can join me if you like. The hags are coming. The hags are coming. They will be here soon. Well, as soon as she did that, I took my bag of salt that I had brought with me, and I spread it all throughout her skin. And then I ran back and watched her as she entered the graveyard. Now, Lopez Island has this really cool old graveyard. It's very spooky. There's about 200 graves there, and the oldest one that we've ever found dates back to 1830. So the hag came in singing that song, and she went right over to a grave. Now, what hags do is on Halloween night, they look for graves that they can go down into and suck up the soul that might be left behind there. Well, she got to the first grave, and she couldn't go down because, as you probably all know, if you put a memento, flower, a book, a card, anything on a gravesite, the hags cannot go down in there. So please remember that. So she moved around. There were some old ones, so she was able to go in for the next 3 hours. She went down. She would just stand over that grave and just dissolve right into the earth, where she would do her nasty work. Well, she came out about 4 in the morning and headed on home. And we all hightailed her back to that weeping willow tree. And she came in the gate singing that song. The hags are coming. Hags are coming. They will be here soon. Well, she went right up to that porch, and she took that skin and she put it on from her head to her toes. And as that salt touched her skin, just like it is when you put salt on a slug in the garden, she let out a and dissolved right down into the earth, where another hag just might steal her soul someday. Well, the next day we went to school, and guess who wasn't there? The school teacher. She was not there. People wondered what had happened. And I don't know if you know about the San Juan Islands, but back then there were 3 pods of killer whales that circled around and fed off the salmon coming down from Alaska. Each pod had 20, 15, and 10 killer whales in it. And the theory is that she was walking around that night, and she must have fallen off one of the cliffs, and maybe an orcapod took her down into their kingdom. But we know the true story. The three boys knew it all along. And now you know the true story of the hag of Lopez Island. Thank you. This is what her skeleton looked like.
All right.
Okay. I have to find us.
Okay, have a minute for our judges to mark their ballots. Such good stories, they're probably having a hard time marking their ballots. Our third speaker this evening, or this afternoon, I guess it's afternoon, isn't it? Is Mark Berry. I can't wait to hear half roping Mark Berry.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, everybody. This story is going to sound a wee bit familiar to some of you, but it's not really. This story takes place in northern Idaho, where all my relatives live. And there's a place up there called Central Ridge. Central Ridge is the most perfect place for farming. And my Uncle Ralph and his brother Wendell and Bartle, real names, they farmed 1,600 acres of Central Ridge. Central Ridge was 2 miles wide and 20 miles long. And there were these nice canyons on either. Well, I won't lie to you. I won't say they were like the Grand Canyon or anything like that, but there were these 2 nice valleys that were 20 miles long, and the cattle would graze down in there, and then the cowboys would go get them and bring them up for the roundup. Well, my folks sent me off there for the summer once again. I think it was cheaper to pay them to feed me than it was to send me to camp. So there I was again. And now I'm 12 years old. I'm in the 6th grade. I'm born and raised in San Francisco, California. And to me, this was another world. Not only were these people decades older than me, but with names like Bertle and Wendell, I mean, it's like from a different planet, you know, we had nothing in common. But I knew Uncle Ralph called it a ranch, even though he's farming 1,600 acres. He kept some cattle, so he called it a ranch. Well, I'm going to the ranch. Now in San Francisco, back in the back around 1960, the only thing that was on for a boy to watch on TV and in the movies was cowboys. There was Wagon Train and Laredo and Rawhide, and John Wayne always had on his boots and spurs, whether he was a cavalryman or a cowboy. And us city kids, me most of all, we wanted to be a cowboy more than anything in the world. Now, somewhere I had picked up a pair of boots, and yeah, they had pointy toes, and yeah, they had that high pointy heel. They didn't quite fit me though. They're a little bit small. And with the heel being raised, it was like being on high heels. You ladies can relate to that. So when I put them on, I was like on high heels, but my toes got scrunched in that pointy little toe part of the boot, and it hurt with every step with both feet, I'm here to tell you. But I still had to wear them because they were my cowboy boots, right? And I had a straw hat that had kind of a wide brim, and I thought it was a cowboy hat. It wasn't a nice Stetson like a cowboy would wear, but you know, I had to make do. So that summer, they just took great fun in me. They just, they had fun. I was a city kid, I didn't know anything. And so they sent me to look for the left-handed monkey wrench in the tool shed, and I went looking for it, and they gave me a gunny sack and a flashlight, and I was snipe hunting out in the dark, and I fell for everything. And it was great delight to my Uncle Ralph. And one time they had the little calves. When they brought the calves in, they put them in this pen that kind of squeezes them, and they'd give them their shots or medicine, whatever they did. I wasn't interested in that part. And Uncle Ralph said, "Stick out your hand." So I stuck out my hand. You don't question the owner of the ramrod. You just do what they say immediately. All the ranch hands did. So stick your hand out. I stick my hand out, and there's 2 little warm, round, steaming things that are now in my hand. And later I figured out that what they were doing is they were taking the little boy calves and turning him into steers by castrating them. And So I had what Uncle Ralph always reminded me the rest of my life. I had steer balls. Now, one time, long after that, we went to town to a restaurant. Now, farmers rarely go to town to a restaurant, but some occasion I forget. We went to the Italian, that's what they call it. We went to the Italian restaurant in the big city of Lewiston. And the Italian restaurant was owned and operated by the only Chinese family in. I still haven't figured that one out. Maybe you can explain it to me later. But on the menu, it said that our meatballs are made with 100% grass-fed Idaho steer meat. And so you think my uncle could say, hey, Mark, pass me the meatballs? No. Hey, Mark, pass me the steer balls. And so again, he was taking great fun, and he'd only take one so he could repeat that at his enormous pleasure several times during the meal. Well, one of the old ranch hands took pity on me and easily surmised my situation, and he gave me an old rope. Now, this old rope had been down in the floor of the dusty tack room for, I don't know, generations maybe. And he gave it to me, and he taught me how to tie just that right loop that you could make a lariat and you could lasso things. And so, oh boy, I was a cowboy, you know. And thank God it was an old rope. If it had been a new rope, it would have shredded my hands. But this old rope was soft and I could really use it. And I was practicing my lariat, and I was lassoing things, and I was lassoing the fence post and from different distances practicing. And I'd lasso that big 5-gallon metal milk can. And I got a chicken, but the chicken jumped out. I couldn't keep the chicken in there, but I was a good throw. I got the rope around the chicken, but he didn't stay in. Unfortunately for my little cousin Connie, she stayed in. So she found out with one try that when I'm out there practicing, she stays in the house. She realized that was safe. Well, this year's roundup happened. And so there's a big corral, there's pins off the corral in different directions. And I was out there on the top rail of that corral watching everything that these cowboys were doing. See, I had my boots with the pointy heels. I had them locked into the second rail. And so I didn't fall over. I was sitting there on the top rail, just like I knew what I was doing. And had my hat on, almost cowboy hat, and my most uncomfortable boots. And they were doing really well. They were bringing in the calves that had been born that last winter, and it was a spring roundup. And they'd bring the calves in, and the calves were in a pen. And two of the ranch hands would go over and put a rope around the next calf's neck, and they'd walk him over to where they were doing the branding, and there'd be a little psst and a little yow, and that's part of what they did. Well, I'm watching like a hawk, and pretty soon the ranch hands decide to have a little fun. Me. So they said, hey, Mark, you want to get the next one? I was off that fence and down on those uncomfortable boots, walking right across the middle of that corral before he finished his last word of that sentence. And so there I go with my lariat, and they're all starting to snicker and giggle already. I hadn't done anything yet. And so I was walking without letting it show on my face that I was wincing with each step. I was walking over, and there was the pen of the calves. Well, they had been going in order from the largest to the smaller, and I knew that. So there were 4 of them in the pen, and one of them was clearly larger than the other. So I knew which one it was his turn, to get it. And so I just spun my lasso twice over my head, and I just dropped it over the head of the correct calf and pulled it tight. And I had him on the first throw, and everybody went quiet. I'm sure they didn't think this was part of the entertainment, that I would do something right. So I decided to walk. Well, in San Francisco, I've seen people walking dogs. I thought I'd walk the calf over to the branding place. Well, in less than an instant, I had 2 fast realizations. My first realization was that since I was maybe 90 pounds, and this calf was probably closer to 300 pounds, I was outweighed 3 to 1. The other realization I had simultaneously was he had 4 legs on the ground with 4 sharp hooves digging in, and all I had was these 2 painful boots. He had a whole lot more traction and a whole lot more leverage than I did. But I found that out when I started to walk him, grab the rope and walk him over here, and he decided to go somewhere else, and I wasn't anything I could do about it. Well, now the cowboy always has to save face, it's the most important thing. And I knew that quite well. So I couldn't let go of the rope, and I had to save face. And I couldn't let him drag me on my belly. That wouldn't do. I couldn't let him drag me on my butt. That wouldn't do. So the best thing I could do was just hang onto the rope for dear life and try to dig my feet in with these horrible boots and those high heels. And he just went wherever he went around the corral, and I sort of looked like I was water skiing, more than anything else, trying to follow this guy. And one time he went by the branding place, and I just tried to keep face. Let me know where you want him as we ran by it. And then when the calf got a whiff of all that heat and smoke and flame and everything, he turned directly around 90 degrees and he headed due south. That means we headed due south. And as he kept going due south, I don't know how it happened, but my legs kept getting wider and wider apart, like I was doing the splits. And then my legs kept getting longer and longer, and it was the most amazing thing. And as we kept going, pretty soon this leg was about a mile long, and this leg was about a mile long. And those dirt clods were just jumping everywhere as I was digging the path. And I dug that channel, those canyons on either side of Central Ridge, and a lot of snow and a lot of water came in, and the erosion caused it. Well, that's why Central Ridge is there today. Thank you.
I believe it.
All true.
Oh. Oh. Well, I don't know about all of you, but I've got tears in my eyes, not from allergies, although they probably have helped, but from all the laughing I've been doing, because we've heard some wonderful lies today. Our fourth speaker is Joyce Orman, a top secret discovery. Top secret discovery, Joyce Orman.
Well, now I was a little person, and I was surrounded by tall people. Oh, they all loved me, except my great aunt Emily. And they all had advice. They were going to send me on the right path. Don't step on a crack, you'll break your mother's back. A rolling stone never gets moss. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Who wants birds? Well, they had all this advice. All I knew was that when I went to bed at night, I woke up, everybody was gone. All the tall people were gone. I was left with just my Aunt Pug and me and my friends and companions. George was a person to be in charge, and he was in charge of the hen house. He was the rooster, beautiful, and he knew everything, and he told you what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And my favorite hen was Henrietta. Well, my favorite cow, who lived in the dairy and the dairy farm, was Sweetheart. She was a great cow. And then there was Annabelle and Kona. They weren't in a fence. They went with me everywhere. I was about 3 or 4 years old. Oh, there were dogs, Boop and Lady. And oh, Porky, he was fun because he told the best jokes. Not only that, he let me crawl on his back to reach down into the barley that we cooked for them. And when it got down to the bottom, you could get a real good buzz out of it. Porky called it fermentation. Well, we had our own rules. At least they helped me form my rules. Don't ever tell one adult what another adult tells you if you want to survive as a little person in a tall world. Don't listen and don't trust what tall people tell you. Verify. Check it out. Well, life was on. I had a great time. I could go any place I wanted. My aunt had a great big clanging bell. And so I could go, and went with me the dogs and the goats. The chickens didn't get to go. They were in a pen. And the goats and the cow and the horse didn't get to go. Now, Duchess was my best friend. She was my companion for 24 years. And I told her everything. Well, we had, in the summertime, we had supper, and then we put the windows all up, and we went out under the oak trees and waited for our air conditioner to come on, which was the Delta breeze that came trickling over the levee and tickled the leaves and over. It was so refreshing. And we had our dessert out there. We usually had fruit, but toward the end of August, the hottest of the season, and in the beginning of September, we had watermelons. You got a big slice of watermelon cut in half, no plates, no forks, nothing. You just, and you know what every one of those tall people told me every time we had watermelon. Don't eat the watermelon seed. It'll grow in your tummy. Don't swallow a water seed. It'll grow, watermelon seed, it'll grow in your tummy. Don't you grow a water seed. It'll grow in your tummy. But I was careful. I talked the animals. They didn't know. They weren't sure. Okay. So one evening, Marie, a very good close friend, came for supper. We had supper. We put up the windows. We went out, and we were having this time ice cold watermelon because it'd been on ice with salt, and they chopped and chopped it. And it just ran down your chin. Oh, it was good. And I was chomp, 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 chomp. Well, you know what everybody told me?
Don't swallow the watermelon seed.
Well, I happened to look up. My gosh, there it was. Marie was chomp, chomp, and about 2 chomps later, she was going to get the biggest watermelon seed I'd ever seen. I said, stop! Did anybody listen to me? I talked to George and Henrietta. They didn't know. They said, well, you know, they have a crop. And if they swallowed a watermelon, they'd get all ground up. And they didn't think that would ever happen to them. Well, I talked to Sweetheart and Kona and Annabelle. They said no, because if they swallowed it, they had 2 stomachs that go in the first one. The second one came, you choke, they're cut and they chewed it up and it went in. They didn't think a watermelon seed would survive. I talked to Duchess. She said she didn't know. She never ate watermelon. Well, I went to Porky, and Porky said, well, you know, we eat watermelon all the time. And I don't really know. I've never seen a watermelon baby that I know of, but you better keep an eye. Prove it. Watch. All the time. You keep him. Okay. So I watched Marie. Gave her extra big hugs. But winter came. On with the coats and the sweaters. To tell you the truth, I forgot all about it. But you know, this time of year, spring is sprung, the grass is riz. I wonder where the flowers is. My father taught me that. And Marie came over. She took off her. Marie had sprung. And she kept sprinting and sprinting. And I was afraid she was going to be like the watermelons out in the field and burst. But no, we got a phone call. Aunt Pug said, guess what? Marie had a baby girl and that she's coming right from the hospital and she's gonna stay with us for 2 weeks. Well, Marie came, baby was wrapped up like a burrito in a nice little soft blanket that was green with light green stripes, just like we had in the field. And that baby was screaming her head off. Well, Marie turned red. She unwrapped the baby pink, like a watermelon that's not quite ripe. And then she unwrapped the baby. And there it was. Proof. That baby had a stem. Like a watermelon. You don't believe. I know, they're there. Have you ever seen one? Have you checked? Well, whatever you do, don't swallow a watermelon seed. It'll grow in your tummy, and I know because I saw one.
All right. Well, I told you we were in for some great stories. And I'll have to check out and see if my children are sprouting anything. They ate watermelon seeds all the time. Our next speaker is John Petrick. His title, How to Be a Good Parent. How to Be a Good Parent, John Petrick.
I am a parent. My wife, Rebecca, and I have 3 good kids. And to be a parent, you gotta protect your kids. You gotta teach them right from wrong. You have to help them make their way into the world. And sometimes you gotta use some tough love. And you gotta let your kids make their own mistakes. Those mistakes can be painful. But when I think about it, it probably wasn't Molly's mistake when she got her head caught in the power window of our Ford Taurus. That was the mouse's fault. Okay, I got to tell you about the mouse. Well, Molly was 7 years old and in 2nd grade. And a lot of good elementary teachers, they have a pet or a plant in their classroom to teach the kids how to take care of it and about nature. And Mrs. Gurgitz had a mouse. And on weekends, one of the kids got to take the mouse home. And one Friday afternoon, Molly comes home with this little gray mouse with beady black eyes and its little cage with this little wheel. And this mouse's name was Eli. And the kids loved Eli, not just Molly, but our 4-year-old Will and 3-year-old Emily. They were just taken with this mouse. The only one that maybe felt a little different was our dog, Pearl. I saw Pearl licking her lips a little bit. Okay, what does this mouse have to do with Molly getting her head caught in our power window? Well, let me back up a little bit here. So it was Saturday morning after Molly brought the mouse home on Friday. And Rebecca had gone somewhere. So I was home alone with the 3 kids. And I was doing something upstairs and the kids were playing in the basement and they were doing great. I didn't hear any screaming or fighting or crying or anything, but being a good dad I am, I thought I better go check on them. So I go downstairs and the kids are doing great, but I hear water running. I go into the basement bathroom and The water's running in the sink, and that little hole at the top of the sink must have got plugged or something, because that water was running out of the sink
Oh.
onto my brand new carpet that I had just laid the weekend before. And I'm not only a good parent, I'm a pretty good handyman too, but so my job was ruined. And I was pretty upset. Like a good parent, I calmed down, summoned the children into the bathroom. I told them what they had done wrong, what they should do better the next time. And then I go to the garage and I get the shop vac. And I tell them, you're gonna vacuum that carpet until it is dry. So kids get going on the shop vac. I go back upstairs. I hear the shop vac running, and then a few minutes later, I hear all this laughing and giggling. So I go back down the steps and see the kids, and they've taken the vacuum end off the shop vac, and it's just the whole part, and they're putting it on their cheeks, and they're putting it on their arms, putting it on their stomachs, they're giggling and they're laughing, and I have to impress upon them that this is serious, that they must be responsible. Well, I get a few glares, but they go back to work, so I go back upstairs and I'm thinking, you know, I think I'm handling this pretty well. I think they're gonna learn something from this. And then Molly comes screaming up the stairs, Dad, Dad, Eli. Apparently they tried to tickle the mouse and the mouse got sucked up into the shop vac. You have to teach your kids also that they must respect other people's property. And this mouse was the property of the school. So I had to run downstairs, I take the top off the shop vac. There's a little mouse swimming around in the water. I pull the mouse out, just gonna put it back in its cage, and it jumps out of my hand and goes in the hallway. Will's in the hallway, says, it went in the laundry room. So the kids are yelling, the dog's barking, I'm gonna go in the laundry room. One thing I forgot was the bathroom's here, the next room is the laundry room. And that water was seeping from the bathroom under the wall to the laundry room. And the water was all over the laundry room. So I run into the laundry room and I hit that water and I'm skidding all over the place. And I'm trying to grab something and I grab the hot water hose to the washing machine. And as I'm falling down, I pull it all the way out of the wall and there's water spread everywhere. I'm laying on the ground and I hear the kids, Dad, he's in the family room. So I get up, I run out into the family room and Emily says, he's up in the bookshelf. Taking books out of the bookshelf one by one, I realized this could take a while. So I go back into the laundry room, get the water shut off, and now there's that much water. I go back into the family room, taking books out. I got a whole shelf cleared out. I got all these books piled up around me. I get down to the second shelf, I pull out the first book. Mouse jumps out of me. I jump backwards. I stumble over all these books. I fall down. I run into Emily. Emily's only 3 years old. She weighs like 35 pounds. So she just goes flying into the brick fireplace. Get up, Emily's screaming, and she has this L on her forehead, exactly the same shape as the brick corner of a brick. And I'm looking at this L and it's getting redder and redder. And all of a sudden it just starts gushing blood. And I'm trying to stop it. And I can't stop it. And I go, God, I gotta get a towel. I gotta get a washcloth or something. So I scoop up Emily. I run back into the laundry room. I hit that water. And I go, oh, I can't fall. I gotta save my daughter. And I grab and I get the cold water hose. And it holds. So instead of slamming onto the floor, I get twisted over and I hit my head against the washing machine and I'm seeing stars, but I saved my baby daughter. Well, I get up and I find a towel. Of course, it's soaking, but I get it on Emily's head and I'm trying to stop it. And then I hear the other kids and they're crying and they're screaming. Get Emily, I go back into the family room and there's Pearl looking up at me. Has a little tail protruding from her mouth. But I don't have time to deal with that. I gotta get Emily to the ER because she needs stitches. So I get her bandaged up, I get the kids, I'm soaking wet, but I get the kids in the back seat, I get them buckled in, and I'm backing out of the garage. And I hear this. And I went, who left their bike in the driveway? Bill said, Molly, and Molly said, Will, and then they both get up, get out of their seatbelts and they open the window and they're standing up on the seat looking behind to see whose bike it is. And Will is only 4 years old, so to get himself a little extra boost, he puts his knee on the armrest. All of a sudden that window starts coming up. And Molly is just in the window. Well, somehow I get Molly extracted, and just at that moment, Rebecca pulls into the driveway. And the kids run out and they're crying, Mom, Mom. Get a fairly stern stare, but I say, I can't explain now. You got to take Emily to the emergency room. So Emily and Beck take Beck's car to the emergency room. And after that, it was a pretty normal weekend. We didn't have to go to the pet store and get another mouse. But you know, I think my kids learned something from that. They did end up being responsible adults.
Yep. Well, we have some excellent storytellers because they all have their stories timed just down to the right minutes. Our next storyteller is on Zoom, so you'll be watching it on TV. And her name is Rupa Mohan. And her title is The Stowaway. The Stowaway, Rupa Mohan.
Namaste. Please show me the cards, Karen. It was the summer of 1981. And I took a Pan Am flight and came to San Francisco all the way from Madras, now known as Chennai in India. And I was a new bride and a new immigrant about to join my husband here. I landed and we went to our little apartment in Cupertino. And here I was with my huge box full of all things Indian. As I started to unpack it, the waves of homesickness and jet lag were really messing with me. And I came upon this stainless steel pressure cooker that my grandmother had packed for me, which had a vent hole on top. There was a strange noise coming from it. Kir, 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 kir. Was I imagining it? Anyway, I opened the box, the cooker, and out of all those bags of spices and other things, there emerged a little something covered with spices. Mushi, is that you? Mushi, did you stow away from Madras to be with me? I was ecstatic because here was my pet mouse. And I was going to keep it a big secret. Pardon me. I need those meds from David. Any case, soon I took Mushi out and we went around the apartment complex. There was nobody there. But suddenly out of nowhere, came a cat, and I realized that I needed to keep her safe and sound. So I built her a little house, put it way back in my closet. And I wasn't going to tell even my husband about her, because I know that pests were not entertained, though this was a pet. Well, I started cooking all kinds of delicacies, especially these fritter-like things called vades in Tamil. Mushi loved it, and she said, And my husband remarked, how come you have become such a good cook? I am a lucky man. She is a lucky mouse, I thought. Well, we were invited to a wine and cheese party. And I snuck Mushi into my little pocket and I gave her all the samplings when nobody was looking. Her favorite was jalapeno jack cheese. And I went to Rice Club and picked up a big block. And we both finished it in no time. My husband was bewildered. How did you go through all that? I need the protein, my dear. Well, there was one celebration after the other, but the most important one was the birthday of Ganesha, the Hindu god with the elephant face. Well, that was Mushi's favorite too, because Ganesha has a vehicle of none other than a mouse, just like her. So we woke up early, we dressed in our silks, and we said our prayers in front of Ganesha after my husband had gone to work. And I made these delicious dumplings with rice and jaggery and coconut. I made mini ones for Mushi, and we both enjoyed them. The holidays were upon us, and my husband wanted to take me to Disneyland, of course. So we got into our old Chevy Nova, and I snuck Mushi into my backpack, which had ventilation, and put her on the back seat. And off we went driving. And when we reached Disneyland, I was eager for her to meet, of course, Minnie and Mickey Mouse. So we went to the parade, but Mushi was not too excited. I tried to pull her out and she snuck back in. I think she was intimidated by their big size and how objectified they were. So the next morning, I treated us to a nice pancake breakfast, Minnie Mouse pancakes. That she enjoyed, going chomp, 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 chomp. In no time, it was all gone. We both tried Space Mountain because in the darkness, I could get her out and hold her. And we both were terrified as we navigated. But we did it. And we were both thrilled about it. Well, what next, I thought. We had been having such a good time, but there were some red flags. My husband started to smell a rat, smell a mouse. And I was getting allergies, and he said, Oh, maybe there is some pet dander around here. What pet? Must be from the dog on this side or the cat on the other side, I remarked. But he wasn't convinced. He had also started hearing some strange squeaking, though Mushi was very good and kept quiet most of the time. So that summer, when it had almost been a whole year, it was anyway time for me to go and visit my family. And I made sure that my husband stayed behind. And I went to Sears and bought a really fancy cosmetic case, you know, the quilted type with a lot of compartments in it. My husband was startled. You don't even wear makeup. Why do you want that? Well, my dear, I want to impress everyone back home. So I had a plan. I started training Mushi how to get in and use all those compartments. And on that fateful day, we went to the airport, Mushi in my cosmetic case. Remember, there was no TSA or screening or anything those days. So we had just breezed through. And we got onto a nice Air India plane. We were only traveling economy, but I felt like a queen with my little princess Mushi. We settled down and all that spicy Indian food was being served to us. Of course, I would give Mushi some to supplement what I had packed in that case for her. We would watch the Bollywood movies together. And before I knew it, we were in Madras. Though it had been a 24-hour journey, it felt like it was much shorter because I had a fun companion with me. It was early morning when I got out of the airport in Madras, and my loving family was there to greet me. And they all remarked how stylish I looked, especially with that case. And how happy I looked. I smiled sheepishly. And when I went to my home in the heart of the city, the temple bells were ringing. People were just waking up. And I headed to my room. Yes, the room where Mushi had visited me almost every night to keep me company while I pored over my books. I went there, I opened the window, and I opened the case, and I let Mushi free. Go, my dear, you kept me company. And now it is time for you to reunite with your family. Thank you for being with me.
All right. Well, I can't believe we're down to the last speaker tonight. We've had such a great program, but I can't wait to hear what Eric is going to tell us, because this title is very intriguing. Eric Hurt. If I'm lying, I'm dying. If I'm lying, I'm dying. Eric Hurt.
So in preparation for today, I was doing some history research on my family history, particularly a woman by the name of Graham or Grams. And I came across the name Leopold Lill, and no relation, but a few days ago, I got to wondering about this Leopold Lill and was wondering whatever happened to him. It said that his words were loud and his voice was shrill, and I was really intrigued. Turns out back in the 1930s, he would stand down in downtown Sacramento and he'd sell these little bottles of water. Now, Leopold Lill, he never looked a day over 30, kind of like me. And he sold these little bottles of water, but for people that were wandering by, he would call out to them, and just say, get them here, get your forever young mineral water, look younger than your son or daughter. And he would sell these. And the police, they came up and they kept warning him about telling these lies about selling this tap water. But after warning, he refused to listen. So they arrested him. They grabbed him by the collar and they pulled him in before a judge. And so the judge, of course, looked up and down Leopold Lil, this 30-year-old something standing in front of him, of course, asked what was going on. Well, the police say, Your Honor, this man here, you should throw the book at him. This is not the first time he's appeared in court selling his fountain of youth water. He's been in the court before, but he always seems to get off on a technicality. According to our records, he appeared here back in 1874, 1895, 1911, and 1927. And this gentleman, over the last 65 years, he's been just lying to the public, and you should throw the book at him. Well, that was Leopold Lil. I was really looking more for information about my Grams. Now, there was this cousin's great-great-grandmother, they just referred to her as Grams, and she lived here in California. Now, I'm not sure if you know that back in the late 1800s, to get people to move from the East Coast to the West Coast, a lot of communities in California, and California itself, would tell people that, if you had something that ailed you, if you were ill, come on out to California. Because of the water, the climate, the air, it will cure whatever you have, and you might live forever. Well, this Graham relative of mine, she moved out here and she liked it so much that she stayed. Now, by the 1920s, the funny thing is, unless you were a family member, you couldn't tell how old she really was. And the only other people that seemed to know how old she was were the coffin makers. Now and again, they would show up at her home with the latest style from back east. And of course, she would wave them off, telling them that was the last thing that she'd ever need. And she never got sick. She never needed to see a doctor. Her friends would ask her, is it true, jokingly, is it true that an apple a day would keep the doctor away? And she would lean into them and say, well, it is if you take aim when you throw it. Like many of us, as we get older, we start reflecting upon the past, our youth, and we think about our household, our hometown, and our home that we grew up in. And she came from Missouri, where some of my family came from. And she decided one day she wanted to go back to the family farm. So she bought a train ticket and she told her family that she was an adult. She didn't need to be accompanied by anyone. And so on the day that she was about to travel, the family came down to the railroad platform and she said goodbye to her kids and her kids' kids and her children's children's children and her children's children. And she just said goodbye. She got on the train and she took off to Missouri. Now, along the way, as soon as she hit about the Rocky Mountains, she had a little bit of a cough, a tickle in her throat. And by the time the train reached the Great Plains, well, her body ached at her. She had this terrible fever. And by the time the train reached her hometown there in Missouri, well, the family that was living there, they all came out and greet her. But sadly, she had died just a few minutes before the train arrived. So the family, not knowing what to do, well, they put her in a coffin, they nailed the lid shut, and they decided, well, she'd want to be buried back in California with the rest of the family. Now, back then, trains were like the airplanes of today, when it comes to baggage. And the last thing anyone wanted was for Graham's body to get lost nowhere in North Dakota. So they hired a person to escort her back to California, and he called himself a body sitter. And the family in Missouri, they paid him half the money there, and he would get the other half from the family in California upon delivery of Graham's dead body. And if he made it back there by the time of the funeral, well, he could pay a little extra. So he grabbed the coffin, he took it aboard the train, and then thinking about the money, a little whisper something to the conductor, and the conductor, you got it. And that train took off out of Missouri. Now, along the way, it kept adding train cars to where the train got really long. You had the engine that you had these heavy freight cars, these empty freight cars, the passenger cars in the middle, empty freight cars, heavy freight cars, and a little red caboose. And they were racing across the Great Plains. Now, as they're going along, as can happen, dark clouds formed overhead and these raindrops start falling. These huge raindrops that were hard to see around. But the engineer, he happened to see a light up ahead. Now, it wasn't of a train coming at them. It was a train going the same direction, but it was going 1/10 of the speed. So as they were racing up towards this light, the engineer, he slammed on the brakes on those trains, that one against the other. Now, those heavy train cars in the back, well, let's just say they were curious. They wanted to see what was going on. So they rushed up to the front, and that train, it pushed up in the middle like a caterpillar with those passenger cars up at the very top. And the body sitter and all the passengers, they looked down and they could see the ground far below. And now I know this sounds I thought it was a little far-fetched. One of the passengers said that they were so high in the sky that he could touch heaven. Now, it's not like they were in space. They're just up high in the sky. Now, not to go in a lot of detail, but as that train slowly worked its way back down to where all the trains were back on the tracks, well, the bodies there, just thinking about that extra money, the conductor, you got it. And that train took off again with a little engine that could. It raced all the way up to the Rockies. And then as it started going up, it slowed down. And as they were going up, the body sitter noticed right out the window this woman carrying a bag, just walking alongside. And he said, "Why don't you hop on board for a ride?" And she said, no, she was in a hurry. And he watched her continue walking up and around the bend and disappeared. But by the time the train made it to the top of the Rockies and started going down, well, the body sitter, he up and the conductor, you got it. And that train raced into California. And when the train arrived at the train station where Grams was from, all the family were there, and of course they were quite sad. And the body sitter, he took the body and the coffin, he laid it on the platform, and then he asked for his money. Now, unfortunately, he was about a week and a half after he arrived, a week and a half after the funeral. But so again, he asked for his half of the money, and then that's when there was a knock from the inside of the coffin, and the body sitter. Oh yeah, about that. As soon as we crossed the California state line, that's when the knocking started. And then again, there was a knock from the inside of the coffin. Well, Graham's family, they all stepped back, and except for one of the family members, and he's, "Hello?" And from inside the coffin, there was a small voice that, "I'm not dead yet. May I come out?" And the fellow's, "Well, Graham, you're supposed to be dead. I'm feeling better. May I come out?" And so they opened up the coffin lid and they helped her out. And she looked just like she did the day she left California, except there was a bit of a smell. But otherwise, they sent her to a doctor, and she checked out just fine. And they sent her home, and they took her they put down the for sale sign, and they put back all the furniture and things that they'd taken from her. And she lived like she'd never left California. Now, as for the body sitter, well, he was supposed to be paid if he delivered Graham's dead body, and well, so I'm not sure what happened there. But as the years went on, one of Graham's family members thought, well, if she's lucky in life, maybe she might be lucky gambling. So they took her up to Reno, and sadly, she died. And the family, not wanting to take any chances, they decided to bury her at the state line, but on the Nevada side of the state line, but with a nice view of California. You're not going to believe this, but the person she was buried next to, turns out that there was this accident. There was a slow train, and he didn't cross the tracks fast enough. And well, next to her plot was this headstone that read, "Here lies Leopold Lill, who we believed always lied and lies here still."
Oh, all righty. Let me put my timing things down because we don't have time. And now I'm going to, while our judges are all marking their ballots, and when the judges are done, will you tear off your back portion of your ballot and hold it up, and our counter will pick them up and do the count. So our first speaker this afternoon was David Tarvin. David, are you still on? There you are.
I'm here.
All right, David, why don't you share with everybody where you actually are and how did you develop that story?
Oh, well, actually, I'm standing in my living room up in Auburn, California. And actually, I just read a weird little article about some guy that had this weird allergy. And he started talking in a Irish accent. That's true. And so I thought, oh, wouldn't that make an interesting story? Somebody has an allergy and they start talking in this funny accent. And then I came up with the pirate accent. And then actually, I don't memorize my stories. I do a story outline and then I just improvise it when I tell it. So that's what I did today. And I was happy for the opportunity.
Well, we truly enjoyed it. Were you actually in Hawaii when you developed that story?
No, I just made it up the other day. But actually, I didn't finish the outline until last night. But I used to live in Hawaii and I did build boats and work in a sailing program. I did live in Kailua and I really did drink. I used to go catch the bus to go to work in Kaneohe, which was the next town over. And I would always go a half hour early to drink coffee and actually just to watch the trees. I mean, it's beautiful there.
So there was a bit of truth with your lie.
Yeah, so I just plug in little things that I know about.
Well,
So,
thank you, David. We really enjoyed it.
oh, good.
Our second speaker this afternoon was Ed Lewis. And Ed, we've heard a variation of this story. You love telling stories dealing with the hag. How did you originally come up with the hag?
Well, actually, probably about 3 years ago, I heard someone tell a story about a hag and a ghost story at a festival I was at. And I was really intrigued by it. I really enjoyed the story. So I got to thinking, I really want to develop ghost stories. I don't tell them. So I thought about my time on the San Juan Islands as a child on Lopez Island. I had an aunt and uncle that lived up there. In the summertime, I would go up that way. And there are a lot of legends up in the islands. People would tell stories. And of course, we were young and when we were up there, the gang of three would swap stories at night around campfires. So all those kinds of things are true. And that just inspired me to put that together, I figured a hag could be a school teacher and then just develop it from there.
Well, it was a great story. And like I said, although I've heard it before, you had a slight variation today, and I enjoyed it as much as before. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Our third speaker today was Mark Berry. So Mark, come on up.
Yes.
And Mark, you told about the calf roping last time. That was more, and this time I liked how you developed the little boy before he got to the calf roping. Was that from something that someone told you after you told your other story that they?
Nope. Just I had a little more time this time. Or did I? Anyway, it just seemed like I had a little more time this time, so I thought I'd give you some background on that little boy, and so you'd love it.
And with a little bit of truth with that was
Everything in that story was just the way I remember it. It was over 60 years ago, but I was thinking about how that geological oddity of Central Ridge, how that could have formed, and I just explained it.
Well, we all enjoyed it. We heard lots of laughs. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
And our fourth speaker today was Joyce. Joyce, come on up.
Where'd you get my hat?
Thinking that when you
Looking
were
for that.
talking. Well,
I have to share this. Vicki and I were over at Joyce's at one of her, what do we call them? Clatches, story clatches. And she just happened to have this t-shirt on. And Vicki and I, before we knew it, that would make a great story. A chicken whisperer. And that's how the story came about. You did even expound more on the animals this time. I really liked how you did that. It was fun because we realized that each of the animals had a personality, and that's how you related to them. That was their personalities.
Well, I did grow up just on the other side of the river. And I did grow up with nothing but adults. I had a terrible time when I went to school at 6 years old because I didn't know how to play with other kids or get along with other kids. In fact, the only spanking I ever got in my life was because I wouldn't come home from school. When I'd hide behind the hedge when the buses were being loaded, and then I'd go and play with the neighborhood kids because I never played with children before. My cousins didn't relate to me at all. They thought I was weird. And like I said, the big people, they just didn't pay any attention. And my Aunt Pug was sort of a Pollyanna. If you talk to the animals, okay, what do they have to say? Oh, really? And I didn't remember talking to the animals. She told me I did. I believed her. But now I live alone with 2 basset hounds, 2 goats, 4 chickens, and a cat. And I talk to my dogs all the time. The dog, no, understand.
Yeah.
So I
have to
still talk
understand
to
me.
animals.
Yeah.
And Duchess did live for 24 years. I had that dog, and she was my main companion. Even after I went to school, I trusted her more than any of my friends.
Yep. Thank you, Joyce, for sharing. Yes, I told you, a lot of the lies have a bit of truth going through them. Our next speaker was John Petrick.
Petrick.
Petrick. I didn't say, I always like to do Petrick. It's Petrick, but it's Petrick. John was part of that true that you, that your poor daughter had
Well,
stuck in them.
There were several true things. I just took. Last Sunday, I put together a whole list of things that happened when our kids were little. And the mouse was the new thing that tied it all together. But I had to throw out all sorts of stuff because we had 3 kids. They broke bones. They did this, they did that, you know. So,
Yes.
but yeah, there were quite a few things that were true, and then quite a few things that weren't true. So,
And for most people that are parents can all relate to at one time or another had one of the, we had the school hamster for over the summer. So I related to your story quite well. Thank you for sharing.
thank you, thank you.
And number 6 is Rupa. And Rupa, I know that you are at a distance, so would you like to share where you're actually located?
Yeah, I'm from Walnut Creek, California, and not,
Oh,
yeah. And sorry, I punctuated my story with cough. Is that a new one for you all?
well, we started off with David sneezing, so why not with you coughing? I mean,
I know.
it
I
started
have these herbal remedies, but they didn't obviously work.
yes.
Anyway, yeah, it's been fun coming and meeting you all. And also, I've been trying different genres, and I tried this tall tale, a longer version of it for Good Liars Club. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes.
And yeah, and it was quite well received there. So I thought, okay, why not try it here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, a lot of it is true, except for the mouse, of course. But but there was a family of mice living, you know, near my room in my grandmother's garden in Madras when I was growing up. So it was easy to spin a story around
Oh,
that.
I just thought you were like Joyce. You had your pet that you talked to all the time, and it just happened to be a mouse. So
Yeah, it was
I
more of an imaginary pet, but I would have appreciated a mouse, you know, to help me get over my homesickness and loneliness in those early years.
yes.
Thank
yes.
you.
Well, we're glad that you stayed and we enjoyed your story. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Madam Votener, do we have?
You do, I don't want to talk to her. But there's one.
Oh, I have one more. I forgot. How could I forget Eric?
It's easy.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
Watching the body.
Well, now Eric's story was true to what he was telling us. If I'm lying, I'm dying, because definitely that aunt had quite a story to tell. But did you actually gather that story by looking into your ancestry?
No.
No.
So it was just, I like California history and I also like tall tales. And it was just kind of fun to piece together different ideas and string them along and then turn them into a story. I don't want to ruin it, but
Very.
the only thing I do want to explain to you, and I was really sad that I was trying to, it's good to have humor when this type of events. So when the coffin makers would come and offer her a coffin, she would say the last thing that she ever needed, that the coffin was the last thing she'd ever need. Does that make sense now?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. That's all right, thank you. I tried. I might tune that up a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is now you know that you just have to emphasize.
A little bit more.
Emphasize that, because now that you say it, we all
Yeah.
put it together, but yeah, so
Did you say beat it?
those are.
Yeah, that's right.
Those are all things we learn as we
As we go.
progress in our storytelling. So I thank you for coming
course.
down. And Eric, where did you live in?
Citrus Heights.
Citrus
I was
Heights.
just up in El Dorado.
Oh, that was it. Okay, you were up in there.
Thanks for waiting for us.
I knew that. I knew he wasn't close by. So we have, I guess we have our winners.
We need drum roll.
And here's the, what is,
Thank you.
that too.
Yep.
I'll check it, make sure I did it right.
Well, you're the one that had to do the adding up, sweetie. And I'm terrible at adding, so I've hardly ever become. Looks at you, like you got all judges on there. Okay, it looks like. Huh? Yes. I know. So she knew, so she just didn't put it down. All right, our third place winner, who will get her dues for next year, will be paid by the guild, is Joyce Orman. Our second place winner and $50. Maybe it was worth coming down the hill. Mark. And first place, even though he forgot to emphasize that he wouldn't need that casket, our first place winner is Eric. Yes. Yes. Eric, you won were you first or second place last?
I couldn't do it last year. And the year before.
Year before.
I'll
Second.
never forget the one he won.
Yeah.
That was a great
Yeah.
liar
Because
tale that he did.
Andy,
It was one of my first ones
one
that
of
I
his
went to.
first time on Andy though.
Yeah.
I'm now going to call our president up, or do you want to be our president of our storytelling guild to say any last words? And again, do a reminder of our upcoming event.
Yeah.
Okay, again, I even had, for some of you, I even have a folder. Coming up on the 29th, and we are making some carpools from Sacramento, is the Bay Area Storytelling Festival. And it's been going on for several years, and it's great. And next month, we're having, instead of meeting here, we're meeting at the Dante Club. We have our storytelling festival. It's the first one we've tried. We're trying hard to make a go of it because we would like to grow it into a full 2-day festival or even 3-day festival. But we are too young yet to get big grants. And so if you'd like to donate, everything goes to this, we have to have at least $5,000 to cover it. I don't know exactly where we stand yet. We're meeting in a week or so. But there are some flyers like this. Now, some of you, I already have your names on folders, and I'm going to give you about 5 to put out. But if there's anybody else who would like to take these and put them in your church